Welcome to the Science of Sports Performance, where we discuss the real science of nutrition and exercise, helping you train smarter, fuel better, and perform at your very best. My name is Ben Pressler, and I'm currently an undergraduate student at Brigham Young University, majoring in both nutritional and exercise sciences. I'm pursuing my PhD with the goal of becoming a professor of sports nutrition. And in today's episode, I'm very excited because that is all we're going to talk about is sports nutrition. Now, I understand that my current qualifications as just an undergraduate student might not be quite up to par with what you're used to from many other podcasts, but I assure you that I am committed to discovering genuine scientific principle and that the information I share with you will be as accurate, as research-backed, and as up-to-date as possible. I also am an athlete myself, and if any of the information I were to share with you is wrong, I would hope to know about it, both so that I can correctly inform you all in my audience, but also so that I have all the best tools in my own toolbox. Today's episode will be part one of a two-part series comprising this and next episode of how I would go about writing a plan for an athlete, for a client of mine. I do offer nutrition and exercise coaching, and I want to give you guys a little bit of a glimpse into the process that I would go through, depending on some various scenarios of how I would do that. So today in part one, we will be discussing how I would write a nutrition plan for a certain athlete. And in next episode, we will talk about how I would write an exercise plan for a certain athlete. And in this two-part series, we will be discussing the hypothetical athletes Noah, Ryan, Zach, and Marcus. All four of these athletes are just people that I came up with. They're not real. Perhaps they are based on people that I do know in certain ways, but none of them are meant to exactly replicate anybody. They're just hypothetical athletes that I think have very applicable goals to most of you. Noah is an 18-year-old boy. He just graduated high school and has begun playing college soccer. His goal is to pretty much just maintain his body weight and perform at the best of his abilities. Ryan is a 25-year-old. He works, let's say, HVAC, simple job, sort of active, but he enjoys weightlifting, bodybuilding type training, and he is trying to grow muscle. He's trying to bulk. Zach is going to be a 32-year-old who just works a desk job. He's relatively sedentary, but has experience in sports and athletics, and he is just trying to lose a little bit of the extra weight that he has. And then lastly, we're going to be talking about Marcus. Marcus is a 23-year-old. He just graduated college, and throughout college, he was an offensive lineman for his football team. He is not going to the NFL or anything. He's graduated college and going to be starting work in whatever profession he chose. And as a college lineman, of course, he was very, very big guy. And his goal is going to be to lose weight, similar to Zach. However, Marcus has a lot of weight to lose. So Marcus is just going to serve for us an example of a little bit more extreme weight loss, whereas Zach is going to be a better example of an athlete, could be across all different types of sports, who's carrying a little bit of extra weight and would just like to lose some of it. Now, we are going to be following these four athletes in this episode, talking about their nutrition. We're going to be talking about these four athletes in the next episode as we talk about exercise. Now, there's lots of controversy in the world of nutrition. My last episode was on manipulating body composition, and I discussed things like the keto diet and the carnivore diet, some of these very controversial things. And of course, I've received a lot of flack for things that I've said that people don't agree with and people think to be false. Of course, I am only going to tell you guys things over this podcast that I believe to be very true and very backed up by the scientific evidence. Of course, I do believe that I am in the right, but that's not something I wish to delve into. What I merely want to say is that I want to be very transparent in my motives of why I share this information. And really it is just because I want to share high-quality scientific information for those of you that have goals related to nutrition and exercise so that you can get the best results possible. Of course, I do offer nutrition and exercise coaching. That is a service that you can pay me to do for you. I, do make money in this profession transparently, but I'm trying to, in these next 2 episodes, show you behind the scenes. I want to give you a great idea into what goes into this coaching service that I provide, not necessarily just so that you guys will see how awesome I am, but really I want to give you guys sort of the tools. I want you to notice some of the patterns that I go over in these next couple episodes so that you guys can be better equipped to make these decisions on your own. I want to be very transparent and kind of show you that my motives are not just to lie to you to make money, as some people would claim. Some people really think that nutritionists and scientists are paid off by big soda and big seed oil and all these different things. Of course, I have no sponsors of any kind, aside from the fact that I do offer these services. What I'm trying to say is that I want you guys to be successful. That is my motive. I do think that hiring a coach is a great idea, especially for those of you who are always adapting and changing, perhaps very high-level performers who have a lot of stress going on, and you don't have the tools or capability to focus on these things. It's just such a detail. A coach could be a great tool for you there, but it's very possible to make great results on your own. And with this podcast, I hope to provide everybody the tools that they need to so do. I also would like to be very transparent about the type of coaching that I offer, and I guess more specifically, the type of coaching that I do not offer. Of course, you need to understand that I am still in my undergraduate studies. I have not graduated, so I cannot claim to be a nutritionist. That would be dishonest of me. I'm not. I certainly am not a dietitian. A dietitian is one whose job primarily is helping coach people with their nutritional practices as they relate to sickness, as they relate to things like Crohn's disease and diabetes, even things like colon cancer. A dietitian's job is to help those who have some sort of adverse health outcomes to eat properly. I am currently, all I can claim to be is a nutrition coach. Again, I plan on becoming a scientist of nutrition, a professor of sports nutrition. Currently, all I am is a nutrition coach. I definitely think that I do have good information to offer, but that is my current qualifications, as well as it's going to relate, especially more so in part 2 of this series. I am not a sports coach. I'm not a baseball coach. I'm not a soccer coach. I'm not a basketball coach or a football coach or anything. So I do not have the position to offer specific training specific to your sport. That's your coach's job. My job is to help you fuel. I can help you get stronger. I can help you manipulate your body composition to where it is an ideal point for your sport. As well as my sport, my emphasis is on things like bodybuilding and powerlifting. Now, those are sports, of course, but they are not your traditional baseball, basketball. In those sports, we care much more about our hydration and our carbohydrate intake because we're performing and practicing every day, whereas my emphasis is admittedly on weight training for things like hypertrophy and strength gain. Now, with that in mind, those are the type of tools that I'm going to be giving to these athletes, how to manipulate their body composition to be most optimal for whatever their sport is, whatever that means to you. That really is applicable to most sports, as well as how to properly fuel your training. Again, in the case of Noah, our 18-year-old soccer player, that is going to be his main goal. He doesn't need to get much bigger. He doesn't want to get any smaller, but he just wants to have the energy and the tools that he needs to perform properly at his sport. With all of that said, let's go ahead and get into it. The first thing that I want to do is read for you guys my new client questionnaire. Whenever I take somebody on, I have it's sort of lengthy. I don't think it's too bad, but lots of different questions so that I can get a feel for the person. And with this initial questionnaire filled out, I send it to them in an email or however, and then when they fill it out, get it back to me, I go over their answers. I kind of understand things like their experience and what their goals are. And then with that information, what we're going to do after that is schedule a Zoom call or a FaceTime call or a phone call. And in that phone call, I'm going to kind of ask follow-up questions about some of the answers that they provided me. I get their opinion on certain dietary practices and strategies that they might employ. And from there, with both the answers to their questionnaire and the information that I've gained from our phone call, I then have all of the resources to write them their initial nutrition or exercise plan. From there, depending on whether they sign up for continued coaching or whether they just want an initial plan to hopefully have the tools that they need to make things work on their own, assuming that they do sign up for a coaching plan where you get week-to-week or month-to-month correspondence with me, we're going to fine-tune. From there, I've gotten all the information I need about you. I've written you a nutrition plan or exercise plan that should be pretty ideal for you. And from there, you're going to say, hey, Ben, I struggle with this meal. It doesn't fill me up, or I just don't enjoy it. I'd like something different. This meal's too big. This meal's too small. This snack is too close to my practice. And with that information, I can continue to adapt and to change. Another thing that might come up is, my goal is perhaps for a bodybuilding aesthetic goal. My goal is to lose 2 pounds a week, and I've only been losing 1 to 1.5 pounds. That's going to tell me that maybe you're not as active as I thought you were. Your calories out are not as high as I thought they were, and we could change that on the exercise of things, or we could change your calories in on the nutrition side of things. So there's lots of levels to fine-tuning this plan for you. But anyways, I'd like to go over and read for you what my new client questionnaire is. Of course, first of all, I'm going to want to know your name, your gender, your height, your age, your weight, and if applicable, I'd like to know your goal weight, whether you're trying to gain weight or lose weight. And then I also want to know your occupation, as your occupation relates pretty highly to your activity level. So are you a desk worker and you're pretty sedentary all day? Are you a construction worker and so maybe you're moving around more so? If you're a professional athlete, obviously that's going to highly impact your energy expenditure throughout the day. Next, I want to get into what your goals are specifically and a little bit about your lifestyle. So what are your main goals? Just kind of describe that to me. Could it be you just want to lose body fat? You want to build muscular tissue? You want to increase your strength? You want to improve your athletic performance? Some people really just want to focus on their longevity. They want to be healthy, live a good life, and stave off chronic disease into their old age. What's your goal? Next, what motivates you to reach your goal? In some people, and a lot of people, they love their sport and they want to be better at their sport. And that's what motivates them to reach their goals. Some people have poor health and they want to improve it. Some people have an upcoming event like a wedding. Some people, it's their family. They want to be healthy so that they could be a good example and spend better time with their family. This is especially the case for parents, those with little kids. Next, what obstacles have kept you from reaching your goals in the past? I've heard countless answers for this. It could really just be something as simple as cravings. A lot of people, it's time. I don't have time to cook healthy meals. I don't have time to exercise. Some people, it's just stress. Some people, it's a lack of knowledge. It's like, nothing's really keeping me from my goals other than that I don't really know much about nutrition. I don't know much about healthy eating. And that's an important question because the dietary approach that we take is going to depend highly on what your obstacles have been. Some people, depending on the obstacles that have kept them from reaching their goals, maybe we should employ intermittent fasting. Maybe we should employ calorie cycling, which is something that we'll go into in more detail later in the episode. The obstacles are going to greatly impact the tools that I think we should experiment with you. Next, I want to know about your exercise. Now, of course, we're not talking about exercise in this episode. We're talking about nutrition, but a person's exercise level is going to greatly impact their nutrition. Of course, their calories, but also if somebody's an athlete and they're practicing and going on runs and they're going on lifts, things like that, we need to fuel them for that. And depending on their goal, again, maybe they want to gain muscle, maybe they want to lose weight, whatever. But your exercise habits and routines definitely impact your nutritional needs. So even if I was only going to do nutrition coaching for somebody and not exercise coaching, I would still ask them these questions. First of all, what kind of a workout experience do you have? Are you an athlete currently? Did you used to be an athlete back in high school? Do you just exercise regularly? You lift weights frequently and you're just trying to get strong. That's kind of the boat I'm in. I don't play a competitive sport or anything. Next, describe to me or send me your current workout routine, if you have one at all. Some people don't. Some people, their answer to that is whatever my coach tells me to do. Some people, it's something they've tried to piece together. And some people, it's something that they found, online for free, just a sample exercise routine. And I'm not saying that any of those are good or bad, but I kind of want to know where you're at. First of all, to see maybe if there are any weaknesses in your program that we could improve upon, but also what style of exercise do you prefer to do? Again, that relates more so to the exercise side of things, but that's things that I need to know as your coach. Next, what type of equipment do you have access to? What type of time restraints do you have? How many days a week can you train? 3, 4, 5, 6, 7? Do you have any injuries that you're sensitive to while training? How close are you to the facilities that you train at? And lastly, what forms of exercise do you find most enjoyable? So, for example, some people really enjoy swimming. I really enjoy rock climbing. That's great exercise. Some people just like to go on walks with their family at the park. Some people like to play with their kids. This could also just be somebody telling me that they really don't like to lift with dumbbells and they prefer barbell exercises. That's fine. If that's what's going to, be ideal for you, if that's what you're going to give more energy and effort to, then that's great. Next up, going into the nutrition side of things. My first question is, do you have any metabolic illnesses like diabetes or PCOS or hypothyroidism? Now, again, going back to the dietetics aspect that I mentioned, I'm not a dietitian. I should not be giving you nutritional advice on how to eat in regards to your medical condition. However, if you are simply trying to lose weight because you are pre-diabetic, that's something I can help with. If you are trying to lose weight but you struggle with it because of hypothyroidism or PCOS or what have you, that is something I can help with. So that's something that I want to be aware of. Next is, how much money are you able to spend on groceries each week? That can vary greatly. Obviously, I want the foods that I tell you to eat and put in your meal plan to be affordable and realistic for you. For most people, it's going to be about the same range, and I'm going to recommend about the same foods. But if you are able to spend more money on groceries each week, you have more money overall, and you put more money into your groceries and your food, I might have you eat things like shrimp. Shrimp is an amazing source of protein. It's pretty tasty. Most people enjoy it, unless you're allergic to it. But it is more expensive. It's not something that most people can include in their diet frequently. How many meals do you like to eat each day? For most people, of course, that's 3, but some people it could be 2. Some people it could be 4 or 5. How often do you tend to eat out in a week? Some people, that's every single day. Some people, that's more than once every single day. Other people like me, it's pretty seldom, maybe once or twice a month. Do you use currently, or are you willing to use protein powder? That's something that's important for me to know, because I think protein powder can be a great tool, but some people don't like it at all. No matter what, brand or flavor they try, they don't like it, and that's fine. You don't have to use protein powder. It's just a convenient source of protein powder. I want to know if that's a tool that I can include in your diet. If you have a goal like powerlifting or bodybuilding, it's definitely something that makes things a lot more convenient. Do you have any food allergies or sensitivities? This is pretty self-explanatory. If you're allergic to peanuts, I'm not going to put that in your nutrition plan. But next, similarly, are there any foods that you strongly dislike? Some people have them. I am not a picky eater at all. I'm kind of a garbage disposal, and you could put almost anything in a meal plan for me, and I would eat it. I like fish, which a lot of people can't stand. I like pretty much all different types of vegetables and fruits. I like whole grains. I am totally used to the taste of whole grains and don't mind them at all. But some people either need to ease into those healthier foods like that, or Sometimes they just have a food that they strongly dislike and shouldn't be in their food plan. Next up, do you follow any special food patterns? Some people, though I don't find it ideal, are vegans. I don't want to talk on the vegan diet too much, but it's possible to get all the protein and everything that you need, but it's going to be a little harder. So if you're an athlete, it's going to be ideal for you to consume things like, eggs and dairy and meat products. But if you are a vegan and you do it for reasons that are very personal to you, that is something that I'm going to try to work around and adapt your diet to. Other examples, of course, are religious guidelines. Because of religious guidelines, you don't eat pork, for example, or if you follow kosher guidelines. I'm not super familiar with kosher guidelines, but I could sure look them up or ask you about them and make sure that I'm writing you a nutrition plan that is going to align with those goals that you have. Next up, this can vary, this can vary greatly depending on who the athlete is, but how much of a change are you willing to make to your current diet habits? Now, for most athletes, I hope not to make a big change, and that's a pattern that I will always follow. When I take on a new client, when I take on a new athlete, I want to know what they currently eat. That's a question that I write further down towards the bottom. But I try and make their diet plan that I write for them very similar, follow similar patterns. In a lot of cases, we can just do simple ingredient swaps. But if you're used to eating a certain way, I don't want to drastically change it unless I have to, because that's going to help you stick to it more consistently. Some people, of course, have pretty bad diet habits, and I do need to do a complete overhaul. Some people are pretty apathetic towards that question. They don't really care. They eat how they eat, and if it was about the same in their diet plan, that's great, but they're willing to completely change it if that's what I think is best for them, and that's something that I think is great. Next up is, what are some foods that you love and would like to keep in your diet? Some people don't really have a strong answer to this. Sometimes their answer is, I'm willing to do what it takes, and that's awesome. Some people really love pizza. They want to keep pizza in their diet. Many people, it's something like chocolate. They love to have a little bit of chocolate in their diet here and there. And again, those are all things that we can work around and we can do. What are some of your favorite protein sources? Is it meat, poultry, fish? Do you like plant-based proteins? Do you consume a lot of dairy? What are your favorite vegetables? Not including potatoes, corn, or onions. That is a stipulation I have to throw in there because, well, potatoes and corn are more so grains and sources of carbohydrates, and onions just really are not very nutrient dense in terms of the vitamins and minerals that we hope to see from vegetables. So excluding potatoes, corn, and onions, what are 3 to 5 is how many I ask for of your favorite vegetables, and then the same thing for fruits. Name 3 to 5 of your favorite fruits. Do you drink alcohol? If you do, how many drinks per week? Depending, of course, on the age of the athlete. If I was working with a high schooler or many college students, they are not even old enough to drink alcohol. And some people are very casual drinkers. And so if I were to, I do recommend to everybody under the sound of my voice not to drink alcohol. It is not good for you. Even in small doses, it is poison. Your body and your liver treats it like poison. And if you are able to completely cut it out of your diet, that is something I would recommend. But some people feel very strongly about alcohol. It's a social thing for them. They want to include it in moderation if they can. And again, just the same as chocolate or pizza, that is something that I do want to try to accommodate for. And then lastly, I'd like for you to track your current diet for 2 days. Do not change anything. Do not try to impress me. Track your diet as it currently is so that I can get a feel for what habits and structure you go by. You do not need to calculate calories or anything, just make a list of foods. But do try to be specific. For example, don't say, I had a ham sandwich. Say, I had a ham sandwich with 2 slices of white bread, 1 slice of cheese, 4 pieces of lunch meat, and mayo on both sides. If you got a coffee or a drink, what size? If you dipped apples into peanut butter, how much? So at this point, I have hopefully a pretty good idea for what you like to eat, for the habits that you have. Again, after I get all this information, we're going to schedule a 30-minute Zoom call, and I can ask some follow-up questions about that, and we can get a feel for the changes that you're willing to make and the preferences that you have for how your nutrition plan looks. But with that, I have written out a hypothetical answer to all of those questions for our 4 athletes, Noah, Ryan, Zach, and Marcus. And the only difference is that for them, I included 1 day of eating of them. But we're just going to say that it's a very average day of eating. For them, it's very, very typical. But that is just for the ease of my disseminating this information to you. But I've written that out for all 4 of our athletes. And with that, we're going to go ahead and get right into it. So, Noah. Noah is an 18-year-old male. He just graduated high school and is beginning to play college soccer. Noah is 5 foot 11 inches tall. He's 170 pounds. And then we estimate that he is about 15% body fat. Now, whenever I do pick up a new client, sometimes they are and sometimes they are not comfortable with sharing a progress photo. Some people, that's kind of their entire goal, is to improve their aesthetic progress and lose body fat and gain muscle. And so they're very comfortable with sharing a progress photo. For all of these people, we're going to assume that they did share one. And then body fat percentage does matter for your total daily energy expenditure. The higher lean mass you have for your body weight, the more calories that you burn. In episode 2, I talked about total daily energy expenditure calculators, online resources that you can use. Being able to input an accurate body fat percentage is really going to be a good tool for you. However, it's hard to get a good reading of your body fat percentage. I'm not going to recommend, unless they have that tool available to them and they'd like to, I'm not going to recommend somebody goes and gets like a DEXA scan, which is pretty much an x-ray of your body to figure out what your body percent is or your body fat percentage is. A lot of times it's really just going to be comparing you visually to what other people at confirmed body fat percentages look like. But again, in this hypothetical, let's just say that Noah is 15% body fat, which I think is pretty normal. It's not super, super lean, but he probably has good visibility of his muscles, maybe has some ab separations as well, which I think for an 18-year-old soccer player is pretty normal and pretty good, pretty healthy. His goal is simply to perform better at soccer, but he wants to make sure that he doesn't lose any muscle. So again, he's not trying to necessarily bulk up and get much bigger. He's not trying to cut down and get much skinnier. He just wants to perform better at soccer. And then like a lot of teenage boys, he wants to make sure that he keeps up his muscle. His current routine is that he lifts 3 times a week and runs 3 times a week in the morning. And then he has soccer practice in the afternoons 5 days per week. He is motivated to reach his goals by his love for the sport. He just doesn't know much about healthy eating. He has played soccer since middle school. He has access to a standard commercial gym where he does his weightlifting, and then he spends about an hour on each weightlifting workout. Again, these are things that are going to more so come up in part 2 of this series. But they also affect his nutrition. He does not have any injuries that he's sensitive to, and he lives only a few minutes away from his gym. That's actually going to be the case that I wrote for all 4 of our athletes today, is that they live only a few minutes from their gym, just to simplify things. For many other people, if you live 15, 20 minutes away from your gym, it's more of a sacrifice to get there. I'd love to see if maybe we can spend a little longer there each day that we go, but then not go every single day, depending on your preferences. Noah does not have any metabolic illnesses, and he spends about $50 to $60 on groceries each week. He eats usually 3 meals in a day and a snack. He does not usually eat out, similarly to me. He does use protein powders, but not every day. He only uses it after the 3 days a week that he lifts weights at the gym. He does not have any allergies to foods, but he dislikes fish, he dislikes Brussels sprouts, and he dislikes peas. He is also not following any special dietary patterns. Noah tells me that he is willing to change whatever he needs to be a better soccer player. He's very committed, has a lot of energy for this, which is great. It's something I always love. He does really enjoy pizza. He would love to keep pizza in his diet. He is used to getting most of his protein from things like eggs, milk, ground beef, and chicken. His favorite vegetables are broccoli, carrots, and tomatoes. And his favorite fruits are apples, bananas, pineapple, and watermelon. Of course, at 18 years old, he does not drink alcohol. Then, Noah sends me an example day of eating. For breakfast, he had 4 eggs. With the eggs, he had cheddar cheese, and he put butter on 2 slices of toast, and he had a glass of 2% milk. For lunch, he had a ham and cheese sandwich with lettuce and tomato. He had a string cheese. He had a granola bar. He had a banana, and he had a bag of Doritos. For a snack, he had a Rice Krispie treat. He had a Dr. Pepper, and he had an Uncrustable. For dinner, and perhaps at 18, maybe we should say that he goes home to his mom's house for dinner. Not that it really matters. For dinner, he had pasta, meatballs, Parmesan cheese, garlic bread, carrots, and a Mountain Dew. And then for dessert, he had 8 Oreos. Now, it seems like a pretty reasonable diet, especially for someone, of his age and his activity level. But when we go and we break it down, using a total daily energy expenditure calculator, of course, at his, activity level, it's kind of going to depend on the day, whether he has practice, whether he goes on a run, whether he lifts weights. But it looks like his total daily energy expenditure is going to be about 3,100 to 3,400 because he is very, very active running around playing soccer. When I tracked his day of eating, his breakfast, lunch, snack, and dinner, and dessert that I've just read to you, that was 4,050 calories. It was about 150 grams of protein. It was 475 grams of carbs and 80 grams of fat. Now, it was a lot of food, and when you're eating so much food, it is pretty simple to meet all of your micronutrient targets, all of your vitamins and minerals. And Noah did hit all of his targets, except for his diet was deficient in vitamin C. Fortunately, I would say that vitamin C is probably one of the easiest vitamins or minerals, for that matter, to improve in your diet. You can just get it from citrus. It's very, very low calorie to improve that. But looking at his diet, it is several hundred calories, perhaps even up to 1,000 calories above his maintenance, his energy expenditure. Now, again, depending on the day, maybe he's not eating that much every single day, but you will see that commonly. He's eating some very, processed, very palatable foods like Doritos and Rice Krispie treats. It sounds like he's having full sugar soda, which, of course, liquid calories are not something that I recommend outside of, you need them quickly in the middle of a long game in the form of something like a Gatorade. But so the main goals that I have for him, of course, I want him to eat enough vitamin C. But then I actually want to cut back on his calories by 700 to 800. And I want to keep his carbohydrates high. His protein was pretty good, but I want to keep it where it's at while limiting our calories. And then again, we are going to be limiting calories. I want to make sure that his micronutrient intake remains the same and remains proper, even though we're going to be restricting his calories. So, as I've said, it's pretty simple actually and pretty straightforward, especially for a diet like this, to just make some relatively small changes to his diet and let the overall structure of his day, the habits that he has in place, to remain about the same. So looking at his diet, what I would want to do is actually keep his breakfast almost identical. He's having 4 eggs with cheddar cheese, butter on 2 slices of toast, and a glass of 2% milk. That's a pretty good diet. Has some protein, has some pretty healthy fats in there. Of course, saturated fat is not considered the healthiest fat, but I mean, he's a very active kid, so he's getting, fat from good sources, eggs and butter and milk. And then he's having a good amount of carbs as well that are going to help fuel him throughout his day. The only change that I'm going to make to his breakfast is that I would like for the toast that he has with his eggs to be whole wheat toast. Now, I might not know exactly what type of bread somebody eats depending on what they send me in this email. That's a question that I would definitely want to ask them in our Zoom call. But let's say that he was eating white bread toast. I would want him to change it to whole wheat toast for a little bit of extra fiber, as well as the phytochemicals that come from that whole grain. And then I'd like for him to change his glass of milk from his 2% to either skim or 1%. Now, I know that there is many people out there do not like skim milk at all. It's milky water and it's gross. And I understand, especially if you're used to whole milk, you're not going to like skim milk. I unironically enjoy skim milk. It's probably my favorite sort of milk. Of course, I'm partial to the fact that it has more protein for less calories, but really, genuinely, I do not mind the taste of skim milk at all. I could drink nothing but skim milk for the rest of my life and enjoy it. I know that might not be the case for him, so we might struggle with that. In that case, perhaps some 1% milk. And that's just in the interest of saving a little bit of calories while keeping his breakfast the same. So again, for breakfast, the only things I've changed was I've added whole grains into his toast, and then I have changed the milk fat percentage of his milk. Next up for his lunch, again, before he was having a ham and cheese sandwich with lettuce and tomato, he was having a granola bar, a string cheese, banana, and Doritos. So it's a pretty big lunch. He's a pretty snacky guy. Maybe he doesn't eat it all at one time. Maybe he has the sandwich and the granola bar, and the rest he just kind of keeps in his bag and eats throughout the day. However that is, lunch, I would actually like to change a decent amount of it. I don't want to change the overall structure, but for example, when you're just having like a ham and cheese sandwich, there's going to be very, very little protein coming from that lunch meat. Most ham and cheese sandwiches, really a slice, 2-3 of ham, and that's not going to be doing very much for your protein goal. So what I'd like for him to do is change it to a chicken sandwich. Just cook up some chicken breast, maybe slice it into long strips, and then when you're making your sandwich, you're going to use the chicken. He can keep using the mayo. I want him to put a little bit more lettuce on his sandwich than he probably did before, but then the fact that he has tomato on there is great for volume and eating the vegetables in that regard. For the sort of snacks that accompany his sandwich with his lunch, I would like him to completely eliminate the Doritos. I'm not saying that you can't have a healthy diet and still eat Doritos, but in his case, I would like the Doritos to go away. And then what I want to do is he can have the granola bar and he can have the banana with his lunch, but then I'm just going to take that string cheese that he used to be eating with his lunch, and I just want to put it later in the day with a snack. Going on to his snack, before he had a Rice Krispie treat and an Uncrustable and a full sugar Dr. Pepper. Now, a change that I'm going to make into pretty much every single athlete or person that I will ever work with is exchanging your full sugar soda with the diet soda alternative. No, aspartame does not cause cancer. That is a topic that I plan on going into later in a future episode of this podcast. Podcast all about food additives and artificial sweeteners and things like that, and the data that we have that proves that they do not cause those adverse health outcomes. I feel no amount of caution as I recommend that somebody switches from full sugar to diet sodas. Now, some people really don't like the taste of diet sodas. To that I say, you will get used to it. I promise you will. Some people are pretty pessimistic about, the outlook of their taste buds adapting to the diet soda alternatives, but you will get used to it. And if you don't think you will, I promise. I actually know people who have said, I've tried to switch to diet soda and I just can't do it. It tastes so bad. I gag whenever I taste, the zero sugar alternative to my full sugar soda. I just love my full sugar soda. But then I'll see that same exact person drinking an artificially sweetened like energy drink or something, and they love it. They think it tastes great. And I'm like, well, there's obviously a disconnect, because it's not that you hate the taste of the artificial sweeteners. It's that you're not used to the taste of a full sugar alternative of that energy drink. Many energy drinks like Ghost energy drinks or things like that don't have full sugar alternatives, but people will still like the taste. It just kind of goes to show me that you can adapt to the taste of diet soda. And really, I think it's a great tool. I think of all the diet alternatives of foods, low fat version of cheese and all these different things. Diet soda comes very, very close, especially when you get used to it. And it is a tool that I'd recommend that everybody uses. Anyways, if he doesn't want to have a diet soda, that's fine. But he's not going to have the full sugar soda. He's just going to have water. And then if he wants, he can have a diet soda. But for his snack, rather than having the Rice Krispie treat and the Uncrustable and the full sugar soda, he is either going to pick that he's going to have the Rice Krispie treat or the Uncrustable. Then he's going to have his string cheese that he used to be eating for his lunch. And again, if he wants, he can have a diet soda. For his dinner, again, I want to add in whole grains. Whole grains really are good for you. I recommend them to everybody for the fiber and for the beneficial phytochemicals that come from the bran and the germ of the grain that a lot of us don't get when we eat refined grains. So I'd like them to have a whole grain pasta. And then rather than the meatballs, especially if you're getting like a pre-made store-bought meatball, they're usually very, very high in fat and pretty low in protein. So rather than having meatballs with his spaghetti, I want him to have just ground beef instead. A 90-10 would work great, and most people, plenty enjoy the taste of a 90-10 ground beef. If you wanted to go further, you could do a 93-7 ground beef, but some people at that point think that it's way too dry and they can't do it. Again, ground beef is one of those things you kind of just got to get used to it. It's not as bad as, some people make it out to be when you get into the leaner cuts. If you get to super, super lean, like 96.4, I do understand that at that point it can be very different. Mouthfeel and taste and everything, then it's definitely something like an 80-20. But when you go down to like a 90-10, you're saving a lot of calories, you're getting a good amount of protein, and it should taste pretty much the same, especially because most people drain the grease off their ground beef anyway. And then, of course, he's having his pasta with tomato sauce and Parmesan cheese. He can keep that. He was having, let me check. Yes, he was having carrots with his dinner before, and that's something that we're going to keep. It's a great source of your vitamin A, or rather it's a great source of beta-carotene. And a beta-carotene is actually, basically it's two vitamin A molecules that are connected together in the middle, and then all our body has to do is break one bond, and with that bond broken, you have some vitamin A. So carrots and sweet potatoes are sources of those beta-carotenes, which can be converted into vitamin A. And really, you do need only a pretty small portion of carrots to get the majority of your vitamin A needs satisfied for the day. And then again, with his dinner, he was having a Mountain Dew. If he wants, he can have a diet Mountain Dew. If not, he can just have water. Then for his dessert before bed that he sent to me before, he was having 8 Oreos. Now, of course, I'm sure that was just sort of a snack, a mindless thing that he didn't think about. I don't know if that's a habit he has every day. But what I did go ahead and do is fit into his diet a little bit of a dessert. What I'm going to have instead of 8 Oreos is 6 Oreo Thins. And I'd like him to have 2 little clementine oranges, cuties, to satisfy his vitamin C needs. One thing that is really beneficial for athletes in regards to vitamin C is that vitamin C increases the absorption of calcium and iron in your digestive tract. And both of those are minerals that are very, very important for athletes for, hemoglobin production so that you can transport oxygen well in your body with iron, and then for the health of your bones for calcium. And in fact, if you eat calcium and iron, if you take a calcium and iron supplement together at the same time, they will actually kind of interfere and compete for the transporters that will move them from the inside of the small intestine into the bloodstream. And so it can actually be harmful to have a meal that is high in iron and high in calcium at the same time. But one thing that will help with those transport mechanisms is the consumption of vitamin C. So I think it might be good for him to have those cuties near and around dinner so that he can help absorb a lot of that iron that he's getting from that ground beef. Now, again, before he was having more than 4,000 calories in a day, 150 grams of protein, 475 grams of carbs, and 80 grams of fats, and was deficient in vitamin C. With this new diet that I've written for him, he is now consuming 3,250 calories. he is consuming 200 grams of protein, which for him at 170 pounds is probably even too high. He doesn't even need that much protein. So, again, if I was coaching him and he wanted, to go back to some of those snacks, I could actually probably cut out a portion of his protein and replace it with something like a Rice Krispie treat that we know he enjoys. And then the calories would remain the same, his protein would remain adequate, and then he would enjoy his diet a little better. His diet has 315 grams of carbs now, 132 grams of fat, and is not deficient in any of the micronutrients. Now, again, going back to, as I was saying, about supplements. First of all, I do not disagree with people who want to take dietary supplements. I take dietary supplements occasionally. For many people, it's just a preventative tool to make sure that all of their bases are covered and they're not going to have any vitamin or mineral deficiencies, and that's great. I would recommend really just taking a multivitamin, a high-quality multivitamin. My favorite brand is the One-A-Day brand. A high-quality multivitamin might be all you need, which is great, for it covers a wide base of all of the vitamins and minerals. Again, if they're well made. But then from the context of an athlete, I've looked at his diet and I've looked at his micronutrient targets, and I've seen that they're all covered with the diet that I've written him. But because he is a soccer player, it might be beneficial for him to take an iron supplement or to take a calcium supplement. The one thing, of course, is don't take those probably at the same time because they could interfere with each other in a big way. And then the other thing is that a lot of iron supplements are actually incredibly overdosed. I believe, off the top of my head, that the recommended daily allowance set for iron is 18 milligrams. And I've seen a lot of iron supplements that have something like 60 milligrams of iron in them. Now, iron is not going to have super toxic effects if you go above the upper limit. But at that point, you're kind of just wasting your money. It could lead to things like kidney stones. And so I would recommend, beef is an excellent source of iron for athletes. Red meats are an excellent source of iron for athletes. And that is something that you should definitely consider. Iron supplements, again, are not bad. They're relatively well absorbed. But keep in mind those things that I've said. Maybe you want to take it with something like an orange that contains vitamin C. It is something, again, that would probably be more prudent for a female athlete, because female athletes, of course, when they experience their period, they're going to lose a lot of blood, and therefore they have a higher recommended daily allowance for iron than males do, and that might be beneficial, especially because on average, female athletes are going to need to consume less calories in a day. Just take an iron supplement. But again, at the end of the day, he is covered with the diet that I've written him. He has met the recommended daily allowance for all of his nutrients. Now, one thing that I will say about the recommended daily allowance for all of the vitamins and minerals is that it is actually written to be the level that will meet the nutrient needs of 95% of the population, the United States population. So, for example, if the recommended daily allowance, the RDA, of something was 100 milligrams, that means that 100 milligrams is enough iron for 95% of the population. Now, you might not need exactly that much, and that is something that's good to understand. For example, me at 215 pounds versus another athlete who's 120 pounds, of course, that'd probably be like a female athlete, but do you really think we need the exact same amounts of all the vitamins and minerals? No, probably not. And there are going to be genetic things lying around, and that can all change these numbers. But just know that if you're a very, very, very small person, and therefore you don't eat very many calories, it might be harder for you to reach 100% of the RDA. But understanding that you are so much smaller, you might not even need the RDA. I'm not going to discourage anyone from trying to get there, but you might not need it. Now let's talk about Ryan. So Ryan is our 25-year-old male. He does HVAC. He is 5'9", 165 pounds, and he sent me a progress picture, and I think he is about 20% body fat. Ryan's goal is to gain muscle mass and strength. His goal weight is 175 pounds. Again, he's 165 currently. So currently, he lifts weights 4 times a week using an upper-lower weightlifting split. And he says that he is a hard gainer. He says that he can't seem to eat enough to put on size. He's been trying. He has been lifting for about a year and a half now, just trying to put on size. And he swears up and down and left and right that he just can't eat enough. This is a very common thing that I hear. He has some experience playing some casual sports, nothing crazy. And he really just identifies now as someone who does bodybuilding training. He just wants to get bigger muscles and he wants to get stronger. He has standard access to a commercial gym. He spends about 75 minutes on each of his workouts that are 4 days per week. He has no injuries that affect his weightlifting, and he lives only a few minutes from his gym. And then we're going to say that he is motivated just by the fact that he loves lifting weights and he wants to look good. That's a fair enough motivation. Maybe it's not as deep as other motivations, but if that's what works, that's great. Now, moving on to the nutrition side of things, he has no metabolic illnesses. He spends about $60 to $75 a week on groceries. In a day, he usually eats 3 meals and has a snack. He does not usually eat out, and he uses protein shakes daily. That's something he is used to. He's not allergic to anything, but he dislikes peppers and tomatoes. He does not follow any special food patterns, and he's sort of willing to change his dietary habits, but he does think he's doing well. He just can't seem to understand why he can't eat enough to gain weight. Food that he'd love to keep in his diet is ice cream. His most common protein sources are eggs, milk, ground beef, and chicken. His favorite vegetables are broccoli, celery, and asparagus. His favorite fruits are bananas, oranges, and strawberries. And he does not drink any alcohol. He sent me his full day of eating, and for breakfast, he has a protein shake with protein powder. He has a bagel with peanut butter spread on both sides. For lunch, he has a very standard bodybuilding diet of chicken, broccoli, and rice. For snack, he has a banana. And then for dinner, he has tacos with ground beef, tortillas, of course, onions, beans, corn, and salsa. And then for dessert, he has a little bit of ice cream. Now, he is kind of following a very similar thing that I see to a lot of guys that I know personally who kind of have the same opinion of no matter what I eat, I can't seem to gain weight. Now, his total daily energy expenditure, especially with him having a more so active job working HVAC, he's not just sedentary all day, he's probably burning between 2,600 and 2,700 calories each day. Now, his diet that I just described to you was 2,400 calories, which means that he's not even at maintenance. He might even be losing weight steadily. And his protein is pretty good at 180 grams. His carbs are 240 and his fats are 75. So his macronutrient split, I think, is pretty good, but it's his calories. He just needs to eat more food overall. So in his case, if he is burning 2,600 to 2,700 calories each day, I'd love to see him eating 2,900 to even 3,000, 3,100 calories, somewhere up there. For someone like this, especially someone who has claimed for so long that they have such a hard time eating enough and they have such a fast metabolism and can't gain weight, I would probably start higher. So say if he was eating 3,200 calories a day, that could be a 500 calorie surplus, which might be more so than you really need to put on muscle. It might be, kind of pushing the boundaries of a dirty bulk. But again, assuming that I'm going to have continued correspondence with him and can adjust his plan later as I go on coaching him, I would then probably take it back, but I really want to teach him that he can gain weight so that his mindset shifts and that he has a better outlook on the whole thing. Also, I did not go over the diet that I just described to you here was deficient in vitamin A, vitamin E, magnesium, and calcium. So there's a lot of micronutrient deficits that we need to address. So what I'm going to start with for his diet is, his breakfast is pretty good. Again, he's having, a protein shake, presumably after the gym, and then he's having bagel and peanut butter, which is a good source of carbs and fats and calories. I do want to, however, add in a little bit of fruit. He said that He likes oranges, so I'm just going to have him have 2 clementines with his breakfast. So it's now protein powder, a bagel, peanut butter, and 2 clementines. It should be pretty reasonable. Then I want him to have a snack in between breakfast and lunch, and all it's going to be is carrots and hummus. Now, this is going to be just a good source of vitamin A for him because he was deficient in it before. Hummus is just a great dip, great way to add calories to carrots. I actually like dipping carrots in peanut butter. It's not something I do often because I don't really consume much peanut butter in my diet, because usually my goal is to maintain or cut my body fat percentage back. So I'm not usually having things like peanut butter. For him, I think it'd be great, but I'm sure some of you scoffed as you heard that. Carrots and peanut butter sounds disgusting, doesn't it? I don't know. I like it. Anyways, carrots and hummus should be good for him. His lunch is really the thing that I want to address, and I don't necessarily want to change it, but chicken, broccoli, and rice, again, is a very standard bodybuilder diet. I'm sure he picked it up on social media. He sees that's what bodybuilders eat, is chicken, broccoli, and rice. But he's trying to bulk. Chicken, broccoli, and rice really is the type of meal that a bodybuilder who's trying to lose weight will eat. The rice is going to give him simple carbs they're not simple carbs, I apologize, but it's going to be a carb source for their workouts, so they have some energy. But then broccoli and lean chicken is really low calorie and it's going to help them be cutting weight. So what I'd like to do is actually have him replace the chicken breast in his lunch with chicken thighs. It's a little more, it has higher fat content, and usually because of that, it's a little more moist. Chicken breast can get pretty dry, which makes it take a long time and really slow to eat, which again could keep him from being able to eat the calories that he needs to gain weight. So we're going to trade chicken breast for chicken thighs. The broccoli is fine. The rice is fine. But another thing that I would have him do is add some sort of a teriyaki sauce, or whatever sauce he wants. You could put ranch on it for all I care, but I think teriyaki sauce is pretty fitting for a chicken and rice dish. But then the teriyaki sauce in and of itself is not necessarily going to add a ton of calories, maybe 50, 60. But what it could do is help him increase his rice consumption. Maybe he's eating a cup of rice. In fact, that is what I tracked, is that he's eating a cup of rice. Maybe with the teriyaki sauce, it tastes a little better, he eats it a little faster, and he realizes that he could eat 1.25 cups, 1.5 cups of rice. And that could improve his, statements that he's not able to eat enough to gain weight. Then, in between lunch and dinner, he's going to have a snack of banana and almonds. The almonds is a source for him of vitamin E. That was another thing that he is deficient in. A little side note on that, vitamin E is probably one of the more common vitamin deficiencies in somebody who is dieting. In North America as a whole, we don't usually see vitamin E deficiencies because vitamin E comes from plant oils. Of course, because we're eating so many calories in America, usually we're eating enough oil that we can get the vitamin E sort of as a side effect. It's not necessarily that we're even trying to get the vitamin E, but when you're trying to lose weight, vitamin E is a very, very common one to be deficit in because you're not eating a ton of plant oils. However, almonds, just 1 ounce of almonds actually contains 50% of the RDA for vitamin E, and 1 ounce of sunflower seeds contains 2/3. So that's going to come with about 150 calories to consume those foods. And some people, frankly myself included, don't really care to consume those type of foods while they're especially trying to cut and restrict their calories and try and use all the calories that they are eating for foods that fill them up and they more so enjoy. In that regard, I might recommend a vitamin E supplement. Vitamin E supplements are prudent, but it is possible to get vitamin E from things like almonds and sunflower seeds. The one thing that I will say about a vitamin E supplement, and it's not really going to affect you because many vitamin E supplements are very, very highly dosed, like 300% of the recommended daily allowance. However, vitamin E is also called tocopherol, and if you look on whether it's a multivitamin or whether it's vitamin E specifically, if you look on the ingredients list, you will commonly see, most all the time, you will see it written as DL tocopherol. And DL means that it was synthesized in a lab. It's synthetic. Now, I've heard so many silly arguments about people like, oh, well, this vitamin or this mineral was synthesized in a lab, and so it doesn't work. It's fake, and your body doesn't absorb it. And that's just not true. It's not. In this case, that claim has a little bit of validity, but what DL means is there's two isomers of vitamin E, and when you synthetically produce it, both of them get produced in equal ratios. However, only the D isomer is going to be properly utilized by your body, and the L isomer is not. So if you see DL tocopherol in your vitamin E, then that means whatever it says you're getting, you're actually only getting half. And so if you're getting, 300% of the RDA from your vitamin E supplement, or in a multivitamin, it's probably going to be something more like 50, 60% of your vitamin E, cut that number in half. Unless, of course, you look on the label and it actually says D-tocopherol. D-alpha tocopherol is usually common, or DL-alpha tocopherol, D-alpha tocopherol. I left out the alpha, but it's the DL that really matters. Anyways, because he is trying to bulk, Ryan is, I'm going to have him eat almonds. That's going to give him about 150 calories and help him meet his vitamin E requirement. For dinner, he's going to have the same darn thing. Tacos with ground beef, onions, beans, corn, and salsa. I'd probably inquire into what, again, going back into the percentages of ground beef. Are you using 80-20? Are you using 90-10? What are you using? Again, if you have a higher fat ground beef, it's going to be good for increasing your calories. Some people do want that, some people don't. So that can be a valuable tool, but let's see. Maybe if you're struggling to get calories in, but your protein's high enough, we can give you a fattier version of ground beef, and that will help you get more calories and, again, keep your protein in check. And then for dessert, I want to give him a Greek yogurt and strawberries. Now, that's similar to ice cream. Of course, he is trying to bulk, so if you wanted to have a little bit of ice cream, that's fine. Greek yogurt I included because it's a good source of calcium, which is one of the things that he was deficient in, and I wanted to have him, have some more fruit in his day, and he said he likes strawberries, so we'll have some strawberries with that Greek yogurt. And then at the end of that day, he's gone from eating 2,400 calories to 3,000 calories. He's consuming 200 grams of protein, which again is probably more than he even needs, so we can cut that back and replace it with other things. If he continues to struggle, he has 360 grams of carbs, 90 grams of fat, and no deficits in micronutrients. He would, again, be deficit in vitamin E if he did not have the almonds. If that was the case, he could supplement with it if he wanted to. But again, because he is trying to bulk, I think it is prudent for him to just eat the almonds or the sunflower seeds or whatever he chooses. Moving on, example number 3. Example number 3 is Zach. We're going to say that Zach is a 32-year-old male. He's an accountant. He's a dad. He has a couple kids. He is 6'1", and he is 220 pounds. I'm going to say that from a progress picture he sent me, he looks to be probably 28% body fat. The little higher body fat than we want, but nothing crazy. He's probably not obese. His goal is to lose body fat mass while preserving his muscle mass. His goal weight is to get to 200 pounds, down from 220 pounds. We're going to say that Zach sends me a generic workout program that he got online, but he isn't super consistent with it. Zach just wants to be healthier for his wife and for his kids, but he struggles a lot with consistency and with food cravings. Zach played baseball when he was a teenager, and he enjoys lifting weights now. He lifts weights in the mornings 2 to 4 times per week. Again, he's not very consistent. He has access to a standard commercial gym. He spends about 75 minutes each workout. He has no injuries that affect his training, and he lives only a few minutes from his gym. Now, another thing that I've included on here, back when I read the original new client questionnaire, was what are some of your favorite forms of exercise, physical activity? Of course, we know for Noah, it was soccer. That's what Noah loves to do, is he plays soccer. For Ryan, he just loves weightlifting, and his goal, I always encourage, even if you're bulking, you should do some sort of cardio to keep your heart healthy. And again, I'm sure I would have gotten into that, but that wasn't quite the point of our discussion with Ryan. It was how to get him lots of calories. But anyway, Zach, I've asked him what types of exercise he enjoys. He enjoys lifting weights in the mornings. He enjoys playing with his kids at the park and things. And he likes playing basketball with his friends occasionally. All those are great examples of physical activity. Zach does not have any metabolic illnesses. He spends $60 to $75 on groceries each week. And he eats 3 meals a day. He eats out 1 to 4 times per week. He does not use protein powder, but he is willing to, if I think it's a good tool for him. He does not have any allergies, but he dislikes mushrooms. He does not have any special food patterns. He's willing to change whatever he needs, he tells me. He doesn't really have favorite foods that he specifically wants to keep in his diet, but he wants a balanced diet. He gets a lot of his protein from dairy, chicken, and fish. His favorite vegetables are broccoli, carrots, and cucumbers. His favorite fruits are berries, grapes, apples, and oranges. And he does drink some alcohol on the weekends. Now, he sent me an example day of eating. It's just 3 meals. He says for breakfast, he has a black coffee. He has yogurt and berries. He says for lunch, he has usually leftovers from dinner last night. On this specific day, it was leftovers taco salad. And so he had some lettuce, of course, on that salad. He had some ground beef, some 90-10 ground beef. He had some tortilla chips with it, some sour cream, some cheese, and some salsa. For dinner, he had salmon, he had spinach, and he had some potatoes. And the salmon and the potatoes were both cooked in a little bit of olive oil. And that's his full day of eating. Now, if you look at that, coffee and yogurt, taco salad, and then salmon and potatoes. And that's all he ate in a day. That's a great day of eating. He's getting lots of protein. It's relatively nutrient dense. He should be losing weight and reaching his goals with this diet. But he tells me that oftentimes, in addition to, this day of eating that he has, he'll kind of, in the evenings, he'll eat ice cream. He'll have cookies, or sometimes he'll go to fast food for lunch if, there weren't leftovers from dinner the last night. So really what he's struggling with is consistency. It seems like he knows what's good for him, but he's struggling with consistency. Now, looking at Zach at 6'1" and 220 pounds, his total daily energy expenditure is going to be 2,800 to 3,000, depending on his activity level. And that full day of eating is 2,000 calories. So he should be losing weight at a pretty good pace, but that is not including his inconsistencies. That's not including if he went to McDonald's for lunch instead of eating his taco salad. That's not including if he had ice cream or cookies for dessert at night. And so 2,000 calories, but it's probably not that on a lot of days. He is eating 178 grams of protein, which isn't too bad. I'm happy with that. Maybe we'll get it a little higher, but that's not bad. It's having 156 grams of carbs and 80 grams of fat. However, his diet is deficient in vitamin C and vitamin E. Again, as I've said, it's very common to be deficient in vitamin E when you're trying to restrict calories. Now, for breakfast, what I want to do with him is just kind of, let me start over. For his meal plan, as I revamp his nutrition, I want to actually sort of increase his calories from that day of eating that he sent me so that we can make his diet a little more enjoyable, so that the deficit is not as strict, and so that he can be more consistent with it. So starting off, he's going to have, his same black coffee, and then he's going to have Greek yogurt and berries. So rather than normal yogurt, we're going to have him have some Greek yogurt so that he gets a little more protein. I'm also going to have Zach, after his workouts in the morning, have a protein shake, just protein powder and water. Then for lunch, we'll say that he has a very similar, day. Say it's the same taco salad, right? He says that usually he has leftovers. I'd probably talk with him about that and see if we could make something a little more structured for his lunch rather than just having leftovers. But if he's having healthy dinners that I'm helping him plan, then he's having leftovers from those for lunch the next day, it should be pretty good. In the example of his taco salad, I want to increase the amount of beef that he has on it just by a little bit. Say if he was consuming 8 ounces of beef before, I want him to consume 10 ounces now. And rather than consuming 90-10 ground beef, I want him to consume 93-7 ground beef. Then, as he has the tortilla chips on his taco salad, I want him to just cut the amount of tortilla chips in half. Then, I want him to use Greek yogurt instead of sour cream, and then he can keep the cheese and the lettuce and the salsa all the same, add some hot sauce on there for flavor if that's what he likes. Then, I want him to have a snack before dinner. Between lunch and dinner, have a snack of 2 clementines and an ounce of either almonds or sunflower seeds. Now, again, if he didn't want to do that and he preferred to take a vitamin E supplement, he would save 150 calories. And I understand the desire to want to do that for many people. And I'm not going to be upset with him if that's something that he chooses to do. However, I think that it is inappropriate for a nutrition coach to write a diet plan that does not try to address all of the micronutrient needs that a person has. In fact, many gym bros out there will try to write a nutrition plan for you, but it will pretty much just be have this many calories and this much protein. And there's really no attention spared to the micronutrients and the fiber and the phytochemicals that you can get from fruits and vegetables that are really going to improve your mood and your well-being and your long-term health. Anyways, 2 clementines and an ounce of almonds or sunflower seeds for his snack. For dinner, we're going to let him have the exact same dinner. We're just going to have some salmon, some spinach, some potatoes cooked in olive oil. But then where we're at now is at 2,100 calories with all of that food that I've listed. And what I want to do now is let him have a 300-calorie dessert of whatever he wants. And hopefully that's a tool that helps him stay a little more consistent. If you kind of make room for a portion of your favorite junk foods, if you make room for some of those, then it's just going to help you be more consistent. So his calorie deficit is going to be a little smaller, but again, that's going to help him be more consistent. He has a little bit of room for dessert. He's having another snack, and he's having a protein shake that is hopefully helping him keep it full throughout his day. And so at the end of the day, let's say he has a 300-calorie chocolate chip cookie. He's going to be consuming 2,400 calories, 200 grams of protein, which is up a little bit and probably good for where he's at, 190 grams of carbs, and 95 grams of fat. And that is with no micronutrient deficiencies as well. Now, my last example is Marcus. Now, Marcus is a 23-year-old male. He just graduated college, and in college, he was an offensive lineman. He, like many offensive linemen, was a big guy. He's 6'4" and 310 pounds. 310 pounds. And from a progress picture, it seems like he's about 35, maybe even 40% body fat. Now, his goal is a good one. He's just graduated from college. He's not going to the NFL or anything, so he's no longer playing football. He doesn't need to be a 310-pound offensive lineman. But he just wants to lose some extra weight for the sake of his health. His goal weight is 240 pounds, which is a good weight for him. Now, he is used to lifting weights and practicing football 5 times per week for hours a day. He is motivated by the fact that he has family members who have had health issues due to their weight, and he doesn't want to turn out like that. He wants to have good health. And he worries, his main obstacle is since that he's no longer playing college football and he's not going to have coaches anymore, that, he won't know what to do and he won't be motivated to do it. He has experience playing football since middle school. He has access to a commercial gym now that he's graduated, and he is used to spending 3 hours a day practicing. He does have history of a torn Achilles, but is okay right now, and he lives only a few minutes from his gym. Now, moving on to nutrition, he does not have any metabolic illnesses. He spends $60 to $75 on groceries each week. He's beginning to work, just graduated college, so maybe he can spend a little bit more money than some of our other examples. He eats 4 meals a day, and he snacks pretty often. He's used to eating at the school cafeteria. He does use protein shakes daily. He does not have any allergies. He doesn't really have any food dislikes, and he does not follow any special food patterns. He tells me that he's willing to change whatever he needs to. Now, he's used to getting his protein from protein shakes, eggs, milk, ground beef, and chicken. His favorite vegetables are salads, carrots, and celery. His favorite fruits are bananas, watermelon, and grapes. And he has 3 to 4 alcoholic drinks each week. Now, he sent me a full day of eating, but it was a full day of eating from back when he played football. And so he relies heavily on the school cafeteria and the student athlete nutrition center, where you can get free snacks and grab and go things to eat during classes. His full day of eating goes as follows. For breakfast, he has a muffin, a banana, and a protein shake from the football meal room. In the morning, he has a snack of trail mix, string cheese, and a Gatorade. For lunch, he goes to Chipotle, and he gets a burrito with chips and guac. Then he has an afternoon snack of 2 granola bars and beef jerky. And then for dinner at the school cafeteria, he has a pretty big portion of pasta with chicken and Alfredo sauce. He has a salad, and he has 2 brownies. Now, that might not sound too bad. I mean, he's eating a lot. He's a big guy. He's a football player. At his height and weight and activity level, currently his total daily energy expenditure could be between 4 and 4.5 thousand. So he's burning a lot of calories. However, this is when, again, he's doing 2 practices a day. He's doing a weight lift with his team, and he's doing a football practice with his team. So as he lowers his activity level, his total daily energy expenditure could go down to 3,600. Now, the full day of eating that I just described to you is 4,800 calories, 250 grams of protein, 535 grams of carbs, 195 grams of fat, and, believe it or not, is still deficient in vitamin C, even though he's eating so much. Now, what I would like to do with his diet is a pretty big change. He's going to be in a different environment. He doesn't have access to the school cafeteria. He doesn't have access to the football meal room. He really is going to have to be cooking and providing the meals for himself, and his activity level is probably going to go down pretty low. Now, if you remember from last episode about manipulating body composition, healthy weight loss can be about 1% of a person's body weight each week. Now, a common guideline is 1 to 2 pounds, but 1% works. Because if you are 2 pounds is a pretty fast weight loss, but if you're less than 200 pounds, you're 150 pounds, 1% is 1.5 pounds. So maybe for you at that lower body weight, to try and lose 2 pounds a week, though possible, would be a little too much. But then in his case, he weighs 300 pounds. So 1% of his body weight is 3 pounds, which means because he's so big, he could lose 3 pounds a week and still stay pretty healthy. Now, his goal weight is 240 pounds, so that's about 70 pounds. So if he loses about 3 pounds a week, it could take him, 23 weeks to do. And that's, a long time, but it's a 70-pound weight loss. 6 months of hard work makes sense, right? To lose that big amount of weight. And then even 240 pounds for him, it really isn't the end goal. At 6'4", 220 pounds even probably is a little healthier. Now, we don't know how much muscle he has. It's hard to tell at this high body weight. So that's something that we would reevaluate later. But because he has so much weight, he can lose it pretty fast and get down to his goal weight in about 6 months. Now, for his new style of eating, the thing that I think would be pretty beneficial for him is, I say intermittent fasting, but it's not quite intermittent fasting. It's a style similar to intermittent fasting that I prefer to do, which is pretty much where you eat a very small breakfast so that you can save your calories for later in the day. So what I'm going to have him do for breakfast is just have a protein shake with skim milk. So protein powder and skim milk. And then if he wants, he can have some sort of caffeine. He can have a black coffee. He can have an energy drink, whatever his preferred source of caffeine is. That could be very beneficial for him in keeping up his non-exercise activity thermogenesis and, just having the energy that he needs to go on about his day. Now, before lunch, perhaps in the late morning, he can have a snack of watermelon and celery. Both of those foods he's told me that he likes, and they're very, very voluminous. So you can have a lot of watermelon and a lot of celery for very little calories. So that's what I'd like for him to do, is have a snack of watermelon and celery in the morning. For lunch, I want him to have actually something pretty similar to what he's used to. He said that he went to Chipotle for lunch when he was playing football. So what I'm going to have him do is have sort of a just burrito bowl. So he's going to have some chicken breast. He's going to have some cilantro rice. He's going to have some beans and some corn mixed together with some salsa on a bowl. And he can have a little bit of light ranch dressing with it. It's going to be high in protein. It's going to be high in fiber. It's going to be, again, pretty similar. And I think burrito bowls are pretty good. You can make them healthy in this way without, them tasting pretty bad like a lot of other foods. So he should be able to enjoy it well and still get a lot of benefit from this meal. Then he's going to have an afternoon snack of grapes, half of an apple sliced up, and then carrots. And that's, again, just going to give him a lot of volume, a lot of some fiber, and some just nutrients, phytochemicals from those fruits and vegetables so that he gets all the health benefits from it. He's reaching those micronutrient targets. And he has, again, some carbs to help him get throughout the day. The grapes and the apple are going to be pretty sweet. The carrots are going to take a while to snack on, so you can just have something to, snack on. Some people just really enjoy having something to chew and snack on throughout their day. Then for dinner, I'm going to have him have a 12-ounce sirloin steak. Sirloin is pretty lean. Maybe if he really wanted to spend some money on it, he could get something like filet mignon. Filet mignon is very, very lean, so it is actually a great diet food, though, of course, very expensive. We're going to say a 12-ounce sirloin steak for his sake, so it can be relatively cheaper, a little more expensive, of course, than other cuts of meat, but should be pretty yummy. No one's really complaining about steak. Of course, he's going to have a little bit of oil that he's going to cook that in. He's going to have some roasted potatoes, and he is going to have a spinach salad with his dinner. And then for dessert, this is something that I would definitely recommend to him and everybody. Again, everyone who can hear me and everyone under the sound of my voice. Popsicles are an amazing dessert. It's something that I use all the time. I have a popsicle or two pretty much every day. Just because they're very, very cheap. They're very, very affordable. But believe it or not, popsicles are actually pretty low calorie. Now, you might just think, they're frozen sugar water. How can that be the case? But most popsicles, of course, there are exceptions, but most popsicles only have about 40, 50 calories, especially if you've ever heard of the Swirl Sticks popsicles. Those have the cotton candy flavor. They're very, very iconic from my childhood, at least. And those are only 45 calories, but they really, really will hit your sweet tooth, and you really, really can enjoy this sweet thing at the end of your day. Some other things that I would tell him to do is he's probably used to having things like Gatorade and drinks at the cafeteria and in the football room. I would encourage him to drink Gatorade Zero or have diet sodas to, again, help with sweet cravings, kind of because he might be in the habit of having things like that throughout the day, sort of grab it and have it in your bag, sip on it throughout the day. Now, this new diet that I have written out for him is 2,500 calories. So it's going to kind of depend where his activity level is. I'm going to recommend to him that he find some way to be active. Maybe he plays, recreational football league. Maybe he starts coaching. Maybe he just finds a new hobby that he enjoys being active in. But then with this, it could be 1,000, it could be 1,200, it could be 1,500 calorie deficit in a day. It's also 220 grams of protein, 260 grams of carbs, and 67 grams of fat. Now, admittedly, this diet is deficit in vitamin E. Again, as I've told you, it's kind of hard to get vitamin E when you're really trying to control calories, as we are in this case. So he could add in the almonds, he could add in the sunflower seeds, at the exchange of that 150 calories, or he could supplement it. And with that, he's going to reach his goal, hopefully in, 6 to 8 months at this point. Now, I hope I've given you a decent insight. I hope, it should be the case that every single one of you who is listening to this has sort of aligned with one of these examples, whether you're just trying to maintain your weight and perform better and fuel your performance, whether you're trying to bulk, whether you're trying to cut, or whether you're really trying to cut back on your body weight. Hopefully, one of these scenarios has kind of aligned with you, and I hope you've noticed the patterns and the tools that I am using to manipulate these people's body composition. Now, lastly, supplements. I've talked a little bit about it already, but I want to just get into it real quick here at the end. You do not need nutritional supplements. I used to be of the opinion personally that nutrition supplements were the greatest things ever because I could just eat nothing but Pop-Tarts and candy, but as long as I was controlling my calories and, taking protein shakes to hit my protein goal, then I could just take all these vitamin supplements and hit all my micronutrient goals, and I'd be super, super healthy. And that's not wrong, but when you're eating the types of foods that provide these micronutrients, you're just getting a ton of benefits. So you're getting a lot of fiber that's going to help you feel full, and it's going to be really, really good for your digestive system. You're getting a lot of phytochemicals from the vegetables and the fruits. Phytochemicals, again, I've mentioned this before, but it means plant chemical, and that's exactly what it is. It's certain chemicals that plants have developed to protect them against the UV rays of the sun and to fend off bugs and to act as antioxidants. In fact, that's often what they do in our body is act as antioxidants so they can be cancer protective. And a lot of these fruits and vegetables are very voluminous, and so they help keep you full more. Our stomach and our intestines have baroreceptors, which means they respond to pressure. So as there's more volume and they put pressure on those receptors, we feel full. So eating voluminous foods is really, really good for us. That being said, I don't discourage them. If anyone ever tells me that they take especially a multivitamin, I would recommend a multivitamin to anybody. I think that sounds great. But if someone was telling me specifically that they supplement with vitamin E, that's great. I've told you that there's big implications for that. As well as specifically for athletes, I've already mentioned iron and calcium. Iron and calcium are common to be deficient in, or rather I should say, if you are an athlete, it is common for your needs for iron and calcium to be a little higher, especially if you're playing a higher impact sport where you're jumping or sprinting around. You might need extra calcium, and definitely if you're participating in an endurance sport like soccer or cross country, or even things like swimming, you might be interested in supplementing with extra iron so that you will have the endurance, the hemoglobin production, the red blood cell, transportation of oxygen, everything going on there so that you can have proper endurance. On top of those, there are a couple other supplements that I know lots of people take. There are lots of people that take zinc just because zinc is used in so many different processes throughout your body that it can be beneficial for your immune system or other things. If, some people anecdotally enjoy taking zinc for those reasons. A lot of people will take magnesium, especially forms like magnesium threonate, because it helps with their sleep. Magnesium is really good for you, and it's another one of those things that can commonly be pretty low in a lot of diets. I will warn you about magnesium. The most commonly and most affordably sold variety of magnesium supplement is magnesium oxide. And magnesium oxide is bordering the line of just garbage. Throw it in the trash. It doesn't do anything. It's not bioavailable. Bioavailable means that your body cannot absorb it. Now, you will hear a lot of people spew that word out, bioavailable, trying to sound scientific and just claiming it out of nonsense, because they're trying to push a certain narrative on you, whatever. I'm not trying to do that now, but genuinely, magnesium oxide does not make it through the endothelium of the intestines into your blood. But if you want to use something like magnesium glycinate, magnesium citrate, magnesium threonate, those will make it through your digestive system into your blood, and your body will be able to use them. I'll caution you, though, there are some sorts of magnesium that are used as laxatives, so be careful not to buy those. I believe it's like magnesium sulfate. Also on the topic of iron, Ferrous iron, that is Ferrous, is better absorbed than ferric iron, Ferric. That has to do with the number of electrons that iron has and what it is able to bind to. So if you're getting an iron supplement, look at the back and see whether it says like ferrous citrate or ferric something, whatever it's bound to. And if it says ferric, you might be better inclined to buy something else that includes ferrous iron because that absorbs better. Anyways, with that, I hope you found value from today's podcast. If you have, please consider supporting me in ways such as liking this video, subscribing to the channel, rating the channel on Apple or Spotify. It really is my goal to improve the scientific literacy in the realms of nutrition and exercise. If this goal resonates with you and you perform any of these actions, likes and comments on the YouTube section, subscribing and rating, it really, really does help this podcast reach other people who might benefit from it. With that, I thank you for joining me on today's episode. This has been The Science of Sports Performance.